Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where we dive deep into stories behind success, uncovering the lessons learned and insights gained by leaders and innovators in the business world. I'm your host, Sonia, and today's guest joining us is Kevin Palmieri. Kevin's journey from hitting rock bottom to founding the transformative Next Level University embodies the very essence of tenacity. Kevin's journey is a testament to the power of self awareness, growth, and the courage to pursue a life aligned with one's true values, even when it means leaving behind the allure of external success. Join us as we explore the depths of Kevin's transformation and uncover the lessons that can help us lead more fulfilling lives. Let's get started. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I am grateful, Sonia. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited to see where we end up with our conversation.
Awesome. So while I was preparing for the episode, there was something in your profile that you mentioned that fascinated me, and I want to get started with that.
Okay.
You talk about how some people find rock bottom, and you found out that rock bottom had a basement. Can you walk us through and explain what that means?
Yeah. So just to give context, I was not supposed to be successful. I
Okay.
don't think anybody really expected that I would ever be any level of successful. I didn't go to college. I had a bunch of odd jobs. I didn't have a very good education. So when I was in my mid 20s, I felt like I had really beat the odds.
Okay.
So when I was 25, I had a high paying job in an industry called weatherization. My girlfriend at the time was a model. I had a sports car. I had just won a bodybuilding show, so I was in the best
Oh,
shape. Yeah, yeah. When I say I had it
me
all, I'm
too.
telling you, I had all the external measures of success. It was all there. But I was internally very unhappy, very unfulfilled, very anxious, very depressed. I just didn't know it. I didn't understand that's what I was going through. So my girlfriend came to me one day and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. You're kind of a shell of yourself. I don't feel like you can give me what I need anymore, and I need to take care of myself." And that's exactly what she should have done. That was my initial rock bottom. My partner just left me. Work got slow. I could barely afford to pay the bills. I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to find love again. I didn't love myself. I was going through all this stuff. I convinced myself that if I made a boatload of money, everything will just kind of work itself out. So that was at my rock bottom moment, my initial rock bottom moment. I said, I just got to grind. I'll work as hard as I can. Let me get as many jobs as I can. Let me make as much money as I can. The next year, I spent 10 months living on the road because all of our contracts were in other states. And I got to the end of the year and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And when I say I couldn't even imagine that as a child, I mean, this blew my mind, but nothing changed internally.
Oh, okay.
My bank account was different and I was more financially abundant, and that's obviously important. But I was just as insecure. I was just as depressed. I was just as anxious, if not more. And I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously, just going through the motions. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So in
Mhm.
2017, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. I fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I know this job isn't it. I've made it to the pinnacle. I do not want to do it again. But as you know, in the beginning, people aren't lining up to give you money for the podcast. It's really hard to make money in the beginning. So I had to keep going to this job every single week. And I'd be on the road for weeks at a time, months at a time. And it just kept eating away at me. So eventually it got to the point where I woke up in a hotel room 6 hours away from where I lived. My alarm clock went off at 5:15 in the morning. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots as I had done 1,000 times before. But that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station.
Mm.
And one is saying, you're stuck at this job. You got so lucky to get this job. What are you going to do? You're not going to leave here. That's not realistic. If you
Right.
if you ever worked up the courage slash stupidity to leave this job, what would your friends think? I make more money than any of my friends. What will your family think? I make more money than anybody in my family ever has. And what are you going to do? This was kind of your plan B.
Hmm.
There isn't a plan C, there isn't a plan D. So it was in that moment where I thought to myself, if I just take my life, I'll take my problems with me. And that was the rock bottom basement, stuck between a rock and a hard place, hopeless, helpless, just a very, very bad place to be. I reached out to someone who was a good friend at the time, who's now my business partner, and I explained to him what was going on. And he said, Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So I ended up leaving my job in 2018. But that was my rock bottom basement moment. Was I got everything I thought I ever wanted. It didn't fix the internal pieces of me. And then I ended up leaving all the external stuff to figure out the internal. And that's kind of been my journey in a nutshell.
Okay, I have like a million thoughts about everything you just said. So the first thing I want to get to is you mentioned like you were living it up. I feel like a lot of people are in the exact same situation as you. I have conversations with people that are saying this more and more, especially after COVID. So I want to talk about that a little bit, where social media has a huge impact on people sort of creating an image or pretending that they got it all and they're happy, but inside they're very unhappy. And don't get me wrong, I've been through that too.
Of
I think
course.
we all do. But like aside from, having the hustle and trying to make money and finding love, what did you really have to do? What was the work that you did to really find that fulfillment inside that didn't come from materialistic things or people per- seeing that, hey, he's living it up, where you're like, all of the external stuff, you put it aside and internally you just put yourself in this really good place. What was the work that you did to get there?
Man, great question. The best way to explain it is I stopped focusing on external results and I started focusing on internal growth. I think that's
Mm,
probably, and it sounds like fortune
yeah.
cookie, like focus on the inner stuff and the external stuff will come. But I tried to focus on the fact that I was anxious and I was depressed. Where did that come from? Well, my dad left I never met my dad until I was 27. Do you think that has something to do with it? Probably. That probably has something to do with it. So, yeah, self awareness. I asked myself why. Why do I feel super comfortable around certain people? Why do other people trigger me? Why
Mhm.
do I believe I can do this, but I do not believe I can do this at all? Where does all that come from? All right, cool. Let me dive in there. And then I think the best thing, the simplest thing I can say is I tried to make my internal self proud,
Mm,
not my external self. My
right.
internal, I am so proud of what I'm doing that for the first time ever, I'm okay with who I am as a human. I had a moment where I was walking around the kitchen one day and I had left my job and I was broke and I was the most single I had ever been. Nobody cared about the podcast. I had zero external results, but I was so proud of what I was doing.
Mm,
So I would say I focused on growth and I focused on a mission. I focused on trying to improve and trying to grow the podcast and trying to be positive in other people's lives. And that's something that really, really helped me. It's not about me. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about more than me. This whole thing is way bigger than me. And that really helped me.
so what did you have to give up to get there?
Oh, a lot of significance. I was
Like,
a I couldn't afford my car broke down and I couldn't afford to get my car fixed, so I had to get rid of it. It was my dream car at the time. When my wife and I started dating, I couldn't get her Christmas presents. I literally could not afford to get her Christmas presents because all my credit cards were maxed out. I get sent to collections because I couldn't pay my car insurance.
mhm,
I lived with my best friend for 3 years and rented a bedroom, and him and I were dream chasing together. I had to give up a lot of external validation is what I had to give up. Friends, I lost a fair amount of friends in this journey, unfortunately. That sucks. Um, and I would
it's
say that
they say that, well, like, growth means losing some friends.
it's I think this is what happens. I don't necessarily think it's because of the growth. I used to, but
Mhm.
this is what I think now. As you grow and as you evolve, your self belief and your self worth start to increase also. I don't
Okay.
know that I think you're leaving people behind that you kind of knew you were supposed to leave behind earlier, but you didn't have the courage to do it. That's really what I think it is. We
That's a good point.
experience, right? We experience that with our team. Our team, we have a 21-person team, and we'll do these team calls every other week. And it's so often where somebody will say, yeah, I went to an old environment with old friends and everybody just like hated me. They just didn't like me. I could tell that they were all villainizing me. It's like, yeah, you're confident now and you have self worth. They were always doing that to you. They were
Yeah.
never really good for you, but you were never enough of a mirror for them to try to tear you down. They probably shouldn't have been in your life in the beginning. But that's really hard to, I mean, that's a really hard realization.
Yeah. And I have a couple other questions for you, but I just want to get to this other point that you were just talking about because I find a lot of the younger generation, so a lot of people like in their early 20s or even mid late 20s, not in the 30s so much, but I find that like there's a maybe it's a culture. I don't know how to describe it, but I find a lot of people even on social media, they're like the hustle, and they're getting on private airplanes and they have fancy cars and they're pushing this culture of crypto and mining and all this stuff where you can make like seven figures, eight figures, and people who work really hard look at this and they're like, how can we get there? And it's sort of like a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, is that really work? Are they really finding fulfillment? To
Mm.
that generation that's sort of there and that's all they're focusing on, what advice do you have? And is that sustainable when they get older and older? Like, can they sustain a lifestyle like that? Or is that going to eventually wear them out?
I think it's definitely going to wear them out. And if you look, even if you look at crypto, it was really hot. Like, the NFTs, that's
Yeah.
kind of gone. A lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of these things are trends. But here's the interesting thing. And I'm going to try to explain this. I don't know if I've ever really been able to explain this. Okay. I don't really have to be successful if
Hmm.
I can get successful selling a course teaching you how to get successful.
Okay.
I just have to get successful at selling the course.
Right.
Then I look successful and then I can sell a course on how to get successful. I think that's what a lot of people are doing. They're not really doing real work. They're
Yeah.
doing behind the scenes fake marketing and then making it look like they're doing real work. But here's the silver lining that has really helped me. To your point, we've used this word a couple times. I'm telling you, they're not that fulfilled. I know it because I've met some of them.
Yeah.
They look really good in front of the scenes. Their lives look really good. They're doing these things. They are not nearly as fulfilled as you think because that's a very empty life for many of them, maybe not all of them. That's part one. Part two, they're not growing. They're not growing and contributing to something greater than themselves. So, this is what I would say. The one thing that's really hard to recognize on social media is fulfillment. It's almost
Right.
impossible. I don't know how you'd know. My assumption now is people most likely are not as successful as they look on social media, and they're most likely not nearly as fulfilled as you'd think. That's given me, I know that probably sounds like super negative, but it's given me solace in the fact that that's probably not real. And then the last thing, you have to identify what success is to you.
Hmm.
Success to you might not be being a millionaire or being on a private jet. That I think that's an important step for all of us to take is if you were in a dark room alone and nobody else was ever going to hear about your goals, what would they be?
Mm. Okay.
And if it's okay if you say, I just kind of want to make enough money to travel and I want to spend time with my family. Good for you. Because if you try to live a life that somebody else is trying to live because you think you want the results, but you really don't, you might end up miserable. And then you're not going to be able to sustain the results, right?
Yeah.
So the process of getting the results is just as important as the sustaining of the process after. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
Well, and you just made such a good point, like not everybody wants to be a millionaire. Some people just want to be able to go to a job that they enjoy and go home to their families, and that's what's really important to them.
Yeah.
And, being able to take a vacation maybe once a year or not taking a vacation. It doesn't the measurement to happiness is not around stuff
Yeah.
and your image on social media as well, right?
Yeah. I think that it's beautifully said because I said this recently on an episode. Not everybody should be a millionaire
Yeah.
because not everybody wants to be. If you want to be, I want you to be. But I would hate for you to see something on social media and say, I want to be like that person.
Mm,
And then spend the next 15 years of your life doing something you hate to get a result that you don't actually want and then regret all that. I think self-awareness. That's why I'm so passionate about self-awareness because if you understand yourself at a deep level, you understand that I want to get my kids off the bus.
yeah.
Interesting. Maybe you shouldn't be a professional athlete or whatever it is. Oh, I want to spend time with my partner. Interesting. Okay. Is that the most important thing? Yeah. Okay. Let's move some things around. I think it's just a self awareness thing.
Yeah. So with over 1,500 episodes, that's a lot, and a global reach, what have been the biggest challenges in scaling the next level university for you?
Money. We were very broke for the first 2.5, 3 years. It was very, very challenging. It was very, very challenging. The other interesting thing is our audience is primarily female.
Oh, okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, I'm a tattooed bodybuilder who loves mixed martial arts and fighting, and that was a very humbling, challenging thing to understand because we had to really, really work on our character and just make sure we're good men first. I have to be a good man. I have to be a good leader. I have to be positive. No toxicity that just won't fly in our community. That was something that was really challenging because I had to shed certain layers of my ego that wanted me to be a bro podcaster. Nothing against bro podcasters if you're listening. I don't mean anything negative. That was really challenging. And then transparently, I had a ton, I still do. Imposter syndrome. Who
Right.
am I to have a successful podcast? Who am I to be interviewing some of the people we've interviewed? I didn't even go to college. These people are all way smarter than me. I constantly, less now than ever, but I constantly dealt with just not being good enough, not being smart enough, not feeling like I belonged in most of the conversations. A lot of it was that internal, you're not good enough and everybody knows it. That was probably the biggest thing for me.
How did you get over that?
I have a really good business partner. That's one. He's been amazing. I'm blessed. He's my best friend, my business partner. It's rare. We have something very, very rare. Honestly, one of the things that I'm really good at is suffering for better
Oh,
or worse. I have never quit tattooed on my arm. Like that's my thing. Never quit. It no matter how bad it gets, you can keep going. So that's been a big piece of it is I just identified and tried to build the identity of you're someone who sticks it out and you're someone who's very humble and you admit when you don't know what you're talking about and you admit when you're scared and you admit when you're overwhelmed and that's strong, not weak. It's not weak if you say, "Hey, I'm struggling." That's strong because it's
right.
really hard to do. And then just asking for help. Asking for help when I get overwhelmed and I have that moment where I think to myself, I'm just not smart enough. Well, maybe I'm not smart enough yet in comparison to where I need to be, but what can I do about that? Ask somebody for a book recommendation or a TED talk. So just trying to be humble, trying to be
Right.
very, very humble with the fact that I'm doing my best. And sometimes my best isn't good enough for where I'm trying to go. So I have to lean on those around me to say, hey, from your perspective, what do you think I can do better? That has helped me feel really, really safe. And then I think the last thing I would say is I try to stop setting goals the way other people told me to set goals. And I started to set goals the way I believed I actually could. So I'm convinced that most of us are lied to, where people say if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I don't think that's constructive for most of us. I think that's destructive.
Yeah.
I started to set smaller goals of, okay, when I go to the supermarket today, I am going to make eye contact with the person walking down the aisle in front of me. I'm going to make the checkout person laugh. That I
Mm,
started I started my confidence with level of small stuff.
I love that. Set set standards that are achievable,
Yeah.
not, I think it's your we're when you set a goal that it's probably gonna take you 20 years to achieve, you're really hard on yourself and you're gonna have those self-doubt thoughts, imposter syndrome, like you're never gonna get there because you've set the standard so high.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you have level 2 confidence, I think you should set level 3 goals.
Yeah.
I think that's a great, if you have 10 out of 10 confidence and you're like, I can do anything, awesome. That's my business partner.
Absolutely. Okay.
Set those goals. But if I was setting those goals, let me tell you, they would be a lot smaller for sure.
So you also found a partner who's the complete opposite of you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think we have something very unique because we went to middle school together. We went
Okay.
to high school together. We were really close in middle school, and then we had a falling out in high school, and we didn't get along very well. He's an electrical and computer engineer
Okay.
with a master's in business. I am a very emotionally driven person who loves connecting with people. That's not the way he was wired. So the mission that we're on has forced us to not only get along really well, but to appreciate the parts of the other person that we used to villainize.
Mm.
I
Thing.
Yeah, I don't know, Sonia. I used to see somebody like him and think this guy is so arrogant. How could you possibly believe in yourself that much? No, he does. He just has undying self-belief, and I am so appreciative of that now.
Yeah.
A big reason is because I've seen behind the scenes of how often he gets hurt because of it. He gets
Oh.
torn down and villainized by people all the time. He might be the nicest person trying to do the best he can in the world, but he gets torn down all the time. For him, he's had to deal with my constant messiness. I'm very unorganized for sure. I'm not always the most optimized human. So the things that we would once villainize about each other, I think are the things that we look at each other now and really appreciate the most because most people don't, most people run away from the thing that they need. And
Right.
he needed more emotional intelligence, which I brought. I needed more success and logic, and that's what he brought. I've just been around it long enough now to really appreciate it, and vice versa. So we're both very blessed, and we realize it because we talk every day. We do an episode every day, so we spend a lot of time together.
Awesome. I love it. So you advocate for a heart-driven but no nonsense approach to self-improvement. Can you explain this and how it differs from other self-help philosophies?
Heart driven but no nonsense to me means I need to tell you the truth because I care about you enough to do it, but I don't ever want to lie to you on either end. I don't want to lie to you and tell you it's going to be harder than you think. I also don't want to lie to you and tell you it's going to be easier than you think. I want to give you as much of the truth as possible. And my ultimate goal is to get you as centered as possible. That's really, I don't necessarily want to say the right thing all the time. I don't necessarily need to be right. I want to bring a new thought or a new piece of awareness that helps somebody shift. That's
Mhm.
really my main focus. I think it's different because in the beginning, I definitely started out with a hustle culture and I probably told everybody that they needed to grind their faces off.
Right.
I didn't really understand yet. I didn't, we have a team predominantly of mothers now. Interesting. I've never seen that. Oh, okay. How does that work? Then we started to understand that the way I do things is not the way everybody should do things.
Right.
And we tried to lead from that perspective of this is what I do, but I don't want to be that guy who says, well, I get up at 4:30 and I'm on the treadmill at 4:31 and you should be too. And if you're not, you can't be successful. No, no, no. That's what we mean now by heart driven, but no nonsense. I want to give you the right advice for you, not the right advice that I want to say because it makes me sound good. That's what we try to do now more than ever.
I love that because I hate those people that are like, I'm up every day at 4 a.m. I'm like, you need 8 hours of sleep. Your brain needs to rest. I'm not that person. I mean, I wake up at like 6:30, but I don't go work out. First thing I do is drink coffee, drag myself out of the house. So those people Well, I think I'm a little envious, but at the same time, I feel like I hate them.
Well, you got to keep it real. Like you said, that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone. It's not healthy for everyone. If it's not healthy for most people, it's probably not healthy for you either. So it's about figuring out what you really want. I really think that self-awareness piece, what do you really want and what do you want the pursuit of what you really want to look like?
Okay. So, my next question, fear often holds people back from reaching their full potential. What are some of the strategies that you applied in your journey to overcome the fear? And the reason I ask this question is because Tenacity with Sonia C is very focused on entrepreneurship and learning from leaders. And, entrepreneurship is a scary thing to get into. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, there's a lot of that hustle uh, culture and build until you fail and you keep building and it's like you got to keep going but I always find that entrepreneurs especially need to learn how to step back, stop, number one, step back, regroup, go at it again with a different mindset. It's just like an accountant that needs to reconcile the books and they can't find the penny. It's like you got to just wrap it up for the day, come back the next day, and you'll find it, right?
Mm.
So, what are some of your strategies for that?
The first thing I ever did was I literally would start tracking the amount of fears that I faced. I had a
Oh,
flashcard and it would say number of fears chased. So we call it fear chasing. And that is how I started. I would give myself a little check every time I did something that scared me.
oh wow.
And yeah, that was it for me. I had 5 habits I would track, and that was one of my 5 habits. The other thing that I do often, and I think I don't know if this is a Air Force thing or a Navy thing. It's one of the military things, but it's best case, worst case, most likely case.
Mhm.
What is the best case that happens from this podcast today? What is the worst case? And what is the most likely case? The best case is we hit it off and it goes really well.
Right.
The worst case is I faint and then I pee my pants. Like that's
Okay.
probably the worst case. That's other than that, I don't know. I don't know if that's probably as bad as it's going to get. What is the most likely case? It's probably going to go pretty well.
Yeah.
So I try to look at the most recent and relevant proof. The most recent proof of when's the last time you did something, the most relevant proof of how related was it to what you're doing today. Because we have so much proof of things that we faced in the past that we didn't think we could, but I think we forget about it and we don't understand how it carries over to other things. And then I try to have a very simple, honest conversation with myself of you're most likely going to be scared of the things that you don't face forever. It's kind of like if you've ever met somebody who says, "Oh no, I don't like Indian food or I don't like oysters or I don't like this." And then you say, "Have you ever had it?" And they say, "No, no, I've never had it." It's kind of like that with fear where you don't really know unless you do it.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
But it's so hard because that's like the least sexy answer in the world of honestly sometimes I just said, "Hey, I'm scared, but I know I'll never get the results I want in life if I don't face this." I've never faced it before. Of course I'm not comfortable doing it yet. That
Yeah.
would probably be arrogant for me to think that I could just hop on a microphone and be the best podcaster ever. I don't have that level of belief. So those are really the 3 things: fear chasing, recent relevant proof, and then just having a real authentic honest dialogue with myself of if you do not face insert blank fear, these are all the things you're missing out on.
Mm.
I am terrified of planes, Sonia. I hate them. I don't like them. I don't understand how it flies. It's a large piece of metal. I don't get it. But if you want to be an international speaker, you can either get on planes or stay in the United States or find a boat, I guess. But that was the conversation I had with myself. I'm not going to be able to have the level of impact. I'm not going to be able to travel. I'm just going to stay here forever because I'm afraid of planes. That's something I need to overcome. And I'm still practicing it every time I get on one.
So, why podcasting? What made you want to go down that route?
This is probably the most cliche answer in the world. Joe Rogan. I
Okay.
was I was
I
listening to
love his
Joe Rogan.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was listening to Joe Rogan And that was part one. I was listening to Joe Rogan. Part two, my business partner, we had just reconnected as friends, and he had a YouTube channel. And
Okay.
he said, I want to interview you on my YouTube channel about fitness. And I said, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like, but let's give it a go. Probably an hour and a half interview. We got to the end, and my business partner, Alan, he went to the bathroom, but we had another friend there with us. And I looked at this friend and I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. That hour and a half went by in like 5 minutes. And he said, well, there's people out there that do. That for me was interesting. So then I ended up making the most money I'd ever made, kind of a perfect timing. And I went and bought the equipment that week, and it was off to the races. So I think I've always liked having deep conversations.
Mm.
I've always enjoyed thinking openly and trying to help other people think deeper. And then when I found podcasting, it was like, this is it. This is what we're going to do.
Hey, one of the things that I'm always talking about, because I'm in tech, a lot of our listeners are tech startups.
Hmm.
We always talk about pivoting. And you're actually a really good example because you said something that made me think, oh, he had to pivot. So pivoting can happen in any type of endeavor that you're in. So when you started this, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I heard you say is you didn't intentionally want to make it for just a women audience,
Hmm.
but somehow it ended up that way. So did you have to go through a pivot where you had to re-strategize the whole podcast strategies so that it catered more to the type of listeners, which were women that were coming in?
100%. Yeah, yeah. In the beginning, I thought I was going to be able to hang out and like drink whiskey and smoke weed on the podcast. That's what I wanted to do in the very beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I was very Joe Rogan, Sonia. I was very Joe Rogan. That's what I was going for. And then it got to the point where we would literally sit in front of the whiteboard and we would say, all right, what does our audience deal with?
Mm.
What is their everyday life like? I don't know. What I do know, and this is something we learn through data and talking to our community just every day, I had very low self-worth and very low self-belief in the beginning. That tends to be the audience that I attracted as well. People
Oh,
with lower self-worth and lower self-belief. Then,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Then we would have women start reaching out. And then Alan and I were talking one day and I was like, has any guy reached out to you? And I think we were like, yeah, maybe like 2 out of 10. Everybody else was women. And they were sending us these long messages about their relationships. And it was wild. And then it was like, okay, cool. We are going to be the men who women feel safe around.
Hmm.
That is my mission. I do not ever want somebody to not feel safe enough to message me. I was raised by women. Alan was raised by women. So yeah, that's definitely a pivot we had to make, and it was terrifying for sure. And I'm super glad we have the opportunity to serve the audience we do, and I hold that responsibility very close to my heart.
I love that. That's awesome. See, that's a great pivot
I think
because
so.
you learned from it. You didn't keep trying to push what wasn't coming your way or going against the grain, right? You,
Yeah,
you took the time to understand, hey, this is our audience. What are we going to do to cater to this specific audience? So I
yeah,
really the
I
that's
appreciate
that's a perfect example of a great pivot. And I love pivot.
well, there's far less whiskey and illicit drugs with this way as well. So
That's a good point. Um, and speaking of time, it goes by so fast. We are reaching our time here, but I just wanted to go back into like the founders mindset or people that are thinking about starting any type of business, be it a podcast or a software company, whatever it might be. What advice, as we wrap up, what advice would you give to them when they're feeling at rock bottom and struggling to see a way out? Because I feel like a lot of young or older, anyone who wants to start a company hit rock bottom a lot.
yeah, I would say remember why you started and remember what your old life was like. There's a company close to where I live that does the same thing I used to do. And there's some mornings where I'll be sitting at a red light on my way home from the gym and I'm tired and I'm overwhelmed and I got client messages and WhatsApp messages, and I'll see that truck pulling out. And I think to myself, Kev, you are going home and you're going to shower and you're going to have breakfast and you're going to have coffee. And then you get to sit in your podcast studio in your pajamas and do
Mhm.
what you love.
Yeah.
You're fine. You have it made. I know life is the most challenging it's ever been right now, but you're doing exactly what you wanted to do 7 years ago. Do not ever forget that. I just try to search for perspective. It's very easy in a moment to think that it's all burning down. But I think if we look and we can find perspective of, look, when's the last time you felt like you were at rock bottom? What happened then? You crawled out, things got better, and you learned an amazing lesson. There's no reason that can't happen again. That's what I would say. It's really hard because when you get there, you don't always want to hear the advice and you're not always ready to hear advice. But reflection is always something that I do when I'm really, really high emotionally or really struggling to see how far we've come.
I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
Remembering where you came from and where you are, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
Right?
Because, like, do you really want to go back there? Right?
It seems like it some days, but then you realize I recorded episode number 7 of the podcast. I was still doing a job I hated. I was lonely. And I said, I want to wake up when I want. I want to go to sleep when I want. I want to podcast for a living. That's what I want to do. I don't ever want to lose sight of that. We said that in the preamble. You said, I appreciate your energy. And I said, I don't want to forget how blessed I am to be able to do this. This is a privilege. A
Yeah.
privilege for me to be able to jump on a podcast and have a wonderful conversation with someone like you. So I don't ever want to forget that.
Yeah. I mean, it's Friday. It's 4 o'clock my time, and I've had a long day. And I pop in, and you're like just full of energy. Got me in a good mood. See, I'm like smiling, and I'm having a great time,
I
and
appreciate it.
because of the energy you brought in. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. Well, you mirror it. You mirror it back. So I want to send it to you as well.
Well, before we wrap up, can you let our audience know how to find you, about your podcast, everything that you want them to know that we haven't brought up? I don't
I,
want to miss that part because it's important.
no, it's all good. I always just suggest the podcast. That's where you're going to learn the most about what we do, and it's free. There's an episode every single day. Go ahead. Next Level University is the name of the podcast. It's on all the podcast platforms. All almost 1,600 episodes now are on YouTube. So yeah, go check that out if you're interested. And questions about anything, you can email me, Kevin at nextleveluniverse.com is my email.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. This was such a lovely conversation, and I really enjoyed it. I hope our audience enjoys it as well, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. Kevin's journey from experiencing the depths of despair to building a life and a community centered on growth, self improvement, and true fulfillment is a powerful reminder of the strength within us to overcome adversity. His insights on the importance of focusing on internal rather than external success, the value of self awareness, and the courage to make meaningful changes in our lives offer a blueprint for anyone looking to navigate their own path to fulfillment. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and join our community on social media. I would love to hear from you. Leave a review and tell me what topics you'd like me to explore in the future. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace change and innovation with tenacity. Keep striving, keep innovating, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more inspiring conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sanya signing off, but as always, remember to chase your dreams with tenacity.